Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, November the 8th, and it is a cold, gray, blustery day outside, and hence we're back into what is currently I'm calling the winter setting for my Flosstube videos. Yes, we had that lovely week last week when it was all nice and sunny and I got to go back into the glorious sunroom, but we're back inside now. On my way home from running some errands yesterday, I laughed because the weather person on the radio was going, "It is -6 and nasty." And that was the first time I'd heard a weather person sort of go. Now, technically, I don't know that that's a technical weather term, but I thought it was pretty amusing as I was sitting in the car driving home. If you are new to my channel, this is a channel about cross stitch and the stitching that I've done this week and cross stitch related topics. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for coming back and spending some of your time with me. I just want to say, hey, thanks for the lovely comments on my video last week. And as I've always said, if you've got any questions, comments, concerns, things you want me to talk about, just put them in the comments down below, and if I know anything about them, I'm more than happy to talk about them. So the topic for this week, as you will have seen, is called Let's Talk a Little Bit About Metallics. And that directly comes from the lovely Denise. She wanted me to go into a little bit more why I don't love working with metallics, and so we're going to talk about that at the end of the video in our usual Let's Talk About time. But I just want to talk a little bit about some of the comments that came in about the anchor floss. And of course, you know, I was doing a few things in my craft storage area. And I said to you that I had inherited some anchor. And as I was doing things, getting ready for this, I laughed because I was looking at my stuff and I went, "What is this?" So everybody knows about the DMC color cards, right? Some of which are printed, some of which have the actual threads. I have inherited, now clearly, this is how much I paid attention to things, but I also clearly went, this is certainly not something you get rid of. So I kept it. So this is, now, and I don't know how old this is, and I don't know if it has all of the colors or not, but I have in my possession an anchor color card. I know, I didn't, to be perfectly honest, I didn't know I had this either until I was, you know, trying to find something else, and I went, wait a minute, what is this? So this actually has the actual floss in it, and has, again, so I don't know how old this is, I don't know when this particular one was printed, but it also has like some of the variegateds. And then this section over here is a section that they're calling tapestry shades, which I don't know what that means, and I don't know how that's different from anything else, but anyway. And I haven't counted how many colors there are to see how recent it is, but if nothing else, it's a starting point. So yeah, I have in my possession an anchor color card. I know. I thought that was great too. You'd think that I would have known that, but anyway, la la la. The other thing that came up in several of the comments was that they enjoyed the discussion and it was interesting to hear about anchor, but anchor is not as widely available as DMC, which is true. So again, there's a plethora of stores and I certainly have no knowledge about all of them. Many of the LNSs and online needlework shops have anchor that you can purchase. The other thing, if you're wanting to see the floss in person, which I have discovered through weird events in my life, quilting stores have some of them, so not all of them, sometimes have a surprising variety of threads that they keep in the quilting stores. So one of my suggestions to you is if you're wanting to see it in person before ordering anything online or anything like that, you may not have a local technical needlework shop, but if you have a quilting store or potentially even a fabric store in your area, they may have anchor floss. So how have I stumbled onto that? Because my mother quilts. And I certainly know that there is one quilting store that's actually really close to where my parents live that has a surprising amount of Valdani threads. Which, okay, not a quilter, and trying really hard not to become a quilter, because the last thing I need is another hobby. So it was in there, you know, to do something for my mother, and sort of, you know, it never hurts to wander around the store, and discovered that they had this big section of Valdani threads, which I didn't see coming. I don't know what they did, and clearly I had so much interest when I was next saw my mother. I said absolutely nothing about Valdani threads. What did quilters do with it? So anyway, it's just a couple of more options if you're wanting to see it live and in person, and if you happen to be in an area that has a store like that, hey, buzz in. You might be surprised at what you find from a thread perspective in that store. So with that, let's get on to our typical topics. We're going to start with my stitching. I know, big surprise. Everybody sees this coming. Sadly, wait for it. I'm still on the bottom panel. Just so you know, there is a day coming where this is not going to be the pattern that I hold up, because I'll be done with the bottom, right? We're all gonna smile and nod our heads and say that that's gonna happen, right? Okay, let's go with that. So still on the bottom. But I have made progress this week. So, what have I gotten accomplished? The Wise Men is finished. And I finished the chest, other than it still needs some back stitching around it, but I need to finish the stairs before I finish the chest. So again, here's my little, you can see a little bit of the sparkle. I will say the camera does not do it justice. It really does look very striking in real life. So I finished the gold in the head covering. There's Kreinik here, and then of course this heavily Kreiniked. Now, the part that I don't know that you can necessarily see, because the lighting is not great. So in this section here, believe it or not, there are 4 colors of Kreinik. And what's even worse is I discovered, after I thought it was completely done, that I had done one of the colors incorrectly. Anyway, so I ripped it out, which was awful. It was awful. It took forever. I had to get a seam ripper out to get the dumb stuff out. Denise will talk about that. Anyway, but I did get it out, and then I did it with the proper color, and I will agree that the proper color, there was a moment where I went, just leave it alone. Who's really going to know except me? And I agree that the correct color is the better choice. But there is my Wise Men done. So 4 colors of Kreinik in this big border. See this chest here? That chest has 6 colors of Kreinik. It has 2 colors more than this. Anywho, yeah, that was really exciting when I was like, finished this off, did all the DMC, and went, okay, great, how bad, oh, look at this, look at all the different symbols, and ooh, they're all under the Kreinik section. So 6 colors of Kreinik in that lovely little chest. So where am I at? So here's the other funny thing. I said this to someone earlier this week, is that in my head there were only 3 steps. So I was only off by 40%. There's actually 5 steps, so there's a lot left to go. And so under each of these steps, there is this shading, and it's actually done in in two different colors. So it sort of alternates as you go up the steps. And sort of there is more of this shadow color that needs to go around the shepherd. There's a little bit in here. So I have a little more of that to go, as well as grass that comes at the end of these stairs. So as much as it looks like it's in pretty good shape, there's a lot of stitching in there. So believe it or not, this is all of this gray along here is what I managed to get stitched last night. Yeah, there's a lot of it. And technically I haven't even finished the first step. There's 3 more of these, plus 2 in a different, anyway, So there's a lot left to go, as well as, once I get that done, then we're down into sheepland. So, pros and cons. Close. We're getting close. We're getting close to the time when I can roll it up. Now, don't forget, there's still a long way to go on this crazy center panel, because I still have an angel and a third plus more Kreinik, because there's streams, if you've been watching, there's streams left to go. And after that, beads. Now the beads are going to come on last, and the beads are going to come in after I have that lovely conversation with the person that this is being gifted to about what colors they really want marry. But they're still, anyway. Whew. But progress, visible progress, and that's also helpful. So hopefully I'll make decent progress this week. Who knows what you'll see next week. Other than all I can say, it's going to be Marbeck. Anyway, but progress, as I say, every stitch completed is a stitch closer to being finished. And 2021 is coming, and hopefully 2021 is going to be the year where, I get to stitch on all new things and all different things, none of which are going to contain the M word. All right, with that, let's talk about some Stashquisitions. Actually, I'm just realizing I have another little bit here, and I'm going, I took none of them out of their bags. Oops. Forgot that step. So let me just do a little bit here of some prep work. And I know people laugh because, this is it's like the people who are doing the no new starts in 2021, so they're like starting everything now. Now that I've said to myself that it's going to be limited, not no, but limited stashing in 2021, I clearly have to up my stash because I don't have it. Anyway, let's not think too hard about that. Okay, so let's talk about the Stashquisitions that have entered my realm. Some of them will surprise you. So this one I've shown before. Yeah, and I know I didn't take it out of the bag, but we'll be fine. So this is Halloween at Hollyberry Farm, which even when I showed it the first time, I said this was a surprising choice for me. I've seen Kindred Stitcher has finished hers and has released the colors that she chose for hers. I believe that Mischievous Stitches is also stitching this, and I don't think she's finished hers yet, but I'm behind on some of my Flosstube watching. So yes, I am planning on changing the colors in this and not necessarily using the called for. And unfortunately, there's just been too much going on this week, so I have felt the need and seen it as well. So, had to do something about that. So I had to buy the companion piece. This is Christmas at Hollyberry Farm. Now, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to do the alphabet and the numbers here at the top. I might just shrink this whole thing down a bit. But, I clearly needed the companion piece. Don't think too hard about that. Okay, And one of the other things that has come in, so if you're trying to not tempt yourself with things, you really do need to stay off social media and not look at Facebook or Instagram, because this is where all the problems arise. So this is from Rosewood Manor. This is called Past and Present. So I have been watching somebody on Instagram stitch this. Now, as usual, I will flat out say this does not do this justice in any way, shape, or form. Like, this looks okay. It's not like you go like, what is that? It looks fine. In real life, the pictures of this are stunning. Stunning. And there's only so long that I can hold out and resist. And so, you know, resistance is futile. It's a lovely Star Trek reference for those of you. Resistance is futile. And so this was acquired and brought home. This one, again, also several of you may sort of go, this is an odd choice for me. And there's a part of me that says it's a little bit odd, not horrendously odd, but this is Halloween Quaker from Lila's Studio. And same thing, I've been watching people working on this and I just, like, it got to a point where I needed to have it. And in fact, they do really great things on here, like even here. So there's this little village down here. And they even show that you could take just that and stitch that up separately, which I know, surprisingly, I think is a, you wouldn't think that this would appeal to me, but it surprisingly does. Wait till we get to the next one. So the other one, so this, the cover piece, the model stitch of this was done on a 40 count Picture This Plus Murky. And hey, we all know, if you order Picture This Plus, be prepared to wait. They're doing the best they can. And I think I mentioned this on the last week. Hey, combination of factors, and don't get us wrong, like we're all ordering like the wild things, and anyway. So this is done on 40 count Murky. I've seen Murky in real life. Murky does not appeal to me, but I think this would look lovely on a overdyed gray and purple fabric. Now, I think I have that fabric in my stash. Have I done any work to confirm that at this point in time? No. Why would I do that? Anyway, but that's my conceptual plan. You would need to do a floss toss on this for sure. And if I had my act together, I'm going to tell you a really interesting about the color that's used here, but that's going to come on a different week because I don't have my act together for this week and forgot to bring those things. So there's Halloween Quaker by Lila's Studio. Oh, there it is. Okay, this is the other one that came home this week. Now, again, many of you would say this is a surprising choice for me. So this is from Cottage Garden Samplings. This is Halloween Sampler 2. I know, it's all very Halloween. So for the Queen of Christmas, it isn't really Halloween-y. The fact that I have this is a little bit surprising. And they do have a Christmas one. They have Christmas Sampler 1 and they have Christmas Sampler 2. And here's the even more surprising statement. I don't really like either one of those, but I like the Halloween ones. So I got this one and again had a couple of things going on in my head about what I was going to do with this. And when I got it and I looked at it, I changed my mind. So this one, again, I think belongs on a gray fabric. Just give me a minute. Let's see. Want to know what this one was stitched on? 40 count Murky by Picture This Plus, which means I'm not stitching it on that either because I've seen Murky and Murky does not appeal to me. But it had me thinking about things. And so I came home, I compared, because I of course also have Halloween Sampler 1. This is what that one looks like. So this is already in the stash. And this This was stitched on 32 count copper penny linen from Witchelt. But they do have an alternate fabric, being Havana linen by Weeks Dye Works. Now, both of those sound like they're going to be way too brown for me. So do you want to know what I think I'm going to do with this? Because it came to me this week. There's my board. Remember this? I know, just bear with me. So this is that Color and Cotton Poison Apple linen that I bought, right? Because I needed to know what Color and Cotton was like. And I said I didn't know what I was going to do with this. I have a concept now. I think I'm going to do Halloween sampler on this Poison Apple, and I'm going to use DMC 823. I think it's going to look great. I was actually quite excited when it came to me. Poison Apple, navy blue thread, and then of course, you know, a little bit, so not tons, but the black will show up, the white will show up, and then I will just have to assess what the correct tones are for the pumpkin to go with this. And, you know, I can change those oranges to whatever. And then it looks like there's one purple down here in this pot, so I can assess that as well. But other than that, I think it's going to look fantastic. I know, not everybody's choice, and this is certainly not going to appeal to everybody. But I think, as we've noted, as I've said with my wall color choices, I'm for bolder colors. And brown is not really a background fabric I like. So I think that's going to look fantastic. Said me to myself. Now, I can always start it and go, what were you thinking? This is the craziest thing you've ever thought of yet. And I can always change my mind. But for right now, I think that's going to be fantastic. So yes. I was really thinking about doing Halloween Sampler 2 first, but apparently Halloween Sampler 1 is coming first. All right, let's talk about free charts. So the free charts this week came because I watched a post. Somebody posted it in one of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, and I've been very clear with everybody where I go, anytime somebody says, hey, there's free charts at, and fill in the blank, I always perk up and go, free charts? Let's go have a look. So these free charts, believe it or not, come from Herrschners. So Herrschners is a online store where it's a crafting store. So it's not just cross stitch or needlework. There's knitting and crocheting and diamond painting and all those things. I'm calling it, it's a crafting store. But somebody put this post up that said, hey, there are free charts on Herrschner's websites. And I went, what do you mean? So I went and I had a look and I followed the instructions. So if you go onto Herrschner's and you go into the cross stitch section and you click on cross stitch patterns. Now, hopefully if I do it correct when I put, so there will be a link below. Hopefully it will take you to the sort. That's what I'm trying to put in there. If it doesn't, that's why I'm giving you all the instructions. So you go to the Herrschner's website, go into cross stitch patterns, then you choose then you go down to the filters and you choose based on price. And you choose from 0 to, I think it's $3.99 or $2.99 or something like that. So you choose the lowest price, and then you sort the results based on lowest to highest price. And then there's all these free charts that pop up. Now, a lot of them don't necessarily appeal to me, which is totally fine. There's something for everybody. But I did download several, because you know me and my line about download the free charts where you can get them. So I'm going to show these in reverse order for a reason. So this is called Welcome Flowers. So it's a relatively small one, so I would say it's about the same size as that butterfly garden square that I did way back in May. So again, simple little border, choose, you know, you can make the flowers any color that you want. So nice little free download. Given that we're into winter and a little bit of snow here, welcome friends and flakes, which for some of us is more relevant than some others. Now, part of it, it's, you know, snowflakes and blue, and I like all of those things. You know, can you change this to whatever you want? Can you change this to aqua? Can you change this to gray? Can you? Sure, absolutely. Don't forget, you can change it to whatever you want, which works for you. And then I felt it was really relevant that I bring something and said, here's one that calls for metallic threads. So this is called Christmas Wishes, and it calls for several metallic threads in there. So those are the free charts for this week. So if you've just come for that part and you don't like the Let's Talk About portion of the episode, thanks for coming and spending time with me. And I hope you all have a great week and you come back. For those of you that are staying for the Let's Talk About, well, courtesy of Denise, we're going to talk about metallic threads. Because I've been talking about them and whining and complaining and moaning and all that kind of stuff. And she wanted, really her question is, why is it so hard, and why do so many people talk about how much they dislike it? And it's true. There are people who really dislike it and who sort of go, once they see it somewhere, the answer is they're done with that. They will change it to something, anything but use a metallic, which I totally get. Hey, your piece and your stitching. If you really hate working with it, don't work with it, because that doesn't make your hobby fun. So here it comes back again. So one of the things actually that I forgot to talk about last week, and you would think that after all of the Kreinik that I have used in this piece so far, that I myself have stitched, you would think that I'd be getting good at this. And the answer is, even with all of the time that I've spent stitching with Kreinik in this piece, the answer is I am still not good at Kreinik. And I'm still moaning about Kreinik, and I'm still whining about Kreinik and all that stuff, but I'm still putting it in because I've also said, for me personally, if the outcome justifies it, I'm going to use it. I will struggle through and I will fight with it, and at the end of the day, it will get in there, right? Same thing. I'm stitching on 36 count linen. Don't really love linen, don't really love 36 count. But this particular piece has to be on 36 count to fit into that frame. So if the ends justify it, I will do it. And so one of the funny things that I forgot to mention last week is my whole intention when I started this border is I was going to start here and I was going to work all my way down and around. And then I went, are you insane? This is Kreinik. And you struggle with Kreinik, and Kreinik is hard. Don't start here. So I started down here. So it's really, I did this. I started here and worked my way this way. That's a topic for a different day. So I actually started down here, and I'm really grateful that I did that, because as usual, my first batch of stitches are not my best. This is where I always go. Remember, I always say it like takes me about 75 to 100 stitches to really get the hang of it every time I use it again. So as usual, these are not my best stitches down here, but by the time I hit here, I had hit my stride again. And so the ones that are up here at the top are actually in decent shape. So every single time this happens to me. And don't get me wrong, I've used a lot of Kreinik in this. I've stitched a lot with Kreinik recently, and it's still a problem every time I pick it up. So let's talk about why is it a problem. So there's a couple of things that go on here. So one of the things that's a problem for me, particularly in this piece, is that the called for is blending filament. So Kreinik comes in a bunch of different sizes and all that kind of stuff. And so I am going to do a separate episode that's actually going to be, let's talk about Kreinik specifically, because they have a variety of different things. And when I start working on the camel, which uses 15 or 16 different kinds of colors and combinations of the Kreinik fibers, that's when I'm going to do one specifically on all the different types of Kreinik, because I'm pretty sure they all show up in the camel. Yeah, there's a lot of Kreinik in my future. It'll be great. You'd think I'd be a master at this, but I'm not. Okay, so one of the problems is that this, what this pattern calls for is Kreinik blending filament, and this is where it's going to get really hard. Let's try this. So normally when patterns call for Kreinik blending filament, what they normally do is that you take one strand of Kreinik blending filament and you combine it with one strand of floss, and you stitch those two things together, and it's to give a little bit of sparkle. When I do that method, it never works out well for me because they never lay correctly for me, and I always feel like the floss ends up covering more of the Kreinik blending filament. And so generally for me, if I see something where they're calling for blending filament combined with, so one strand of blending filament combined with one strand of floss, I normally up it and just go, forget that, let's just go straight to number 4 braid and use one strand of number 4 braid and just stitch it. Now, it's more sparkly, it's not as subtle, so that's also a choice you have to make. The thing that you can do now, again, technically, have I done this? No, so I don't really know for sure. But there is the new Etoile, the DMC Etoile floss, which has a little bit of sparkle in there. Now, there's only a limited number of colors in this, but from the people that I've seen, again, on Facebook and commenting on Instagram, they say it's actually quite easy to work with and that they're really happy with the outcome. So it's an option, and quite frankly, again, if I came across a pattern that was calling for one strand of blending filament and one strand of floss, I think I would actually go see if there was a DMC Etoile that was in the color range of that particular thing, and I would probably try that first, even before I went to the number 4 braid. So that's a newer option. Okay, so here is, so the problem again, okay, so you can see it a little bit there, right? So here's the gold one. So the thing that presents even more of a challenge with this particular piece is that when they call for the blending filament, they're calling for it to be 2 strands stitched together, which, this is me, I go, doubles the painful component. And so why is it hard to work with? Well, so first of all, it's coming off of a spool, right? So when you take this off and it doesn't straighten out very well, right? So when you take this curly thing and then you double 2 curly things, it's a little bit of a pain to work with, okay? Don't get me wrong, I'm sitting here going like, kind of looks like a double helix. Somebody sciencey out there may like that. Not a true double helix, and I get that, but anyway. So that's part of the problem, is that it does tend to twist up on itself because it's coming off of a spool. Now, is there a better way to put this? Potentially. So, for example, this is Petite Treasure Braid. So again, Petite Treasure Braid and a Kreinik number 4 braid are similar, so they're a heavier weight. You would only need to use one strand of this generally. Now it's on a card, so it has a couple of kinks, but it certainly isn't as twisty as this. Think curling a ribbon that you wrap presents with, and it'll give you the gist. If you're somebody who's really good at that, maybe you're okay, but I'm not the best at that either. Anyway, so Petite Treasure Braid, and even there, I will say I like the Petite Treasure Braid technically better than I like a Kreinik number 4 braid. We'll talk about that when we get to the Kreinik episode. So along with having 2 strands that twist on itself, so the other part is that, and again, I don't know that it's necessarily going to show on this one. I don't know that it's going to show on this one either. So the other problem that comes along with this, sorry, everything's getting tangled, which is part of the problem. So the other thing is that the ends of these glorious things, I don't know that this is going to show at all, is that it tends to come apart. Oh yeah, you're never going to be able to see this. So there are multiple filaments. So there's the sparkle filament, there's a very thin filament at the inside that actually keeps this. And what happens is that your end frays. I know you can't see that at all. Okay, just trust me. So it frays, so it tends to start coming apart at the end. And so people find it really frustrating that as they're stitching along, like the end of your thread is starting to fray on you, and you can easily lose a lot of it. So one of the things that I do with this is when I'm stitching with this, okay, yeah, I'm unspooling a ton of it. So what I normally do is, if I were using 2 strands of DMC floss, I would use the loop method. I would pull it through, and I would bring my needle back through here, and that's how I would start my floss. When I am using Kreinik, I do the reverse. So I do that same thing, but that's how I attach it to my needle, so that as I come down here, I've got these 2 ends, and I stitch those in and finish them off as I'm stitching. And what that does is it helps contain the fraying, because the ends are already sewn in. This is fixed to my needle, and so I don't have that fraying effect. If I were to do it the other way, what would happen is both of these ends would be loose and would be fraying as I'm stitching, and would be coming untwined or untwisted as you stitch. And so even if you chose a length that was only like this, you could lose probably up to about there of stuff, because it was just fraying as you were stitching with it. So again, I attach the loop to my needle, sew the ends in, again, which is also why my end is Kreinik comes very last, because I need those other stitches to sew the end in, which then gives me a decent length to work with. Now, it's unbelievably finicky, and again, so part of the issue here is that I'm using 2 strands of blending filament. I do better with a number 4 braid, but again, for various reasons, I'm following the pattern as called for. And again, don't get me wrong, the effect on that Wiseman is fantastic, and I love it, and it looks great. It's really a pain in the neck to work with. So that's what I do as I'm using with that. Now, I'm just going to sort of quickly spool this back up, because there's more Kreinik in my future. Yeah. It twists, it knots on itself is also a reason why people don't like working with it. So again, shorter lengths. And again, when I use Kreinik, my stitching slows down dramatically. So I stitch a lot slower when I'm using Kreinik, because I have to be that much more careful. I'm careful about how I'm laying it. I'm having to stitch slowly so that it doesn't knot up on itself and twist on itself, particularly with 2 strands. So that's an issue with that. Now, Denise was talking about that she had a chart that called for DMC Metallics, which I don't know if you know this, but someone in one of the Facebook groups called it Satan's dental floss. So here's how the DMC Metallic comes. So it is, I will say it is more wiry than Kreinik or Petite Treasure Braid. So Denise, I'm also going to say, if you want to tell me the pattern, oh no, I think you did tell me the pattern. It's the glitter houses, I think, is what you think that you're working on, and you've done it to a DMC conversion. So I may look at that. I may come back with a very specific suggestion. Now, again, do the ends justify the means? Maybe. It is more wiry. You will have a little bit of the same, and again, so I don't remember what it said if you're using 2 strands or whatever. It's just going to feel dramatically different as you stitch with it. You're going to have to stitch slower. You're going to have to be careful with it. It's going to be finicky, shorter lengths, all that kind of stuff. And so really, again, it's a matter of preference. You can always, I think you've already bought the skein, so fine. You can always start with it, but before you finish it off, decide how you're liking it. Because once you finish it off, as I discovered, taking it out is a bear. I didn't think it was going to be as problematic as it was. It turned into, like, I think it took me an evening of stitching time to rip out the things that I had done wrong in that lovely Wiseman's trim. It was the right call. It was good that I went back and I did it in the right color, and all of those things. I still agree with my decision, but, you know, I'm back on. I lost an evening's worth of time. 1, because I'd screwed up and I hadn't paid attention. 2, should have noticed it earlier. Anyway, had to rip it out. So it's not fun ripping it out either. So, but my answer is always try it. My answer is always try it. The worst that can happen is you can go like, wow, I really don't like working with this. But this is, it feels rougher than than a Kreinik or a Petite Treasure Braid. But I'd need to go look. Denise, I'll go have a look at the glitter ones and see if I have a different suggestion for you. But feel free to try it. Maybe there are people out there who go, I don't understand what the big deal is about working with metallics. There are those people, and you could be one of those people. I don't necessarily love working with metallics, but I generally, if I'm putting in a metallic, it's because I want the look. I want how it's going to look at the end, and that's, you know, the ends justify the means. Do I substitute Petite Treasure Braid for Kreinik number 4 braid? Sure. Am I going to be switching out any of the Kreiniks in the Marbeck piece? No, because the supplies came with the piece, and 3 out of the 5 panels were started and have Kreinik, and I need the look to be consistent across the piece. So the answer is I'm doing Kreinik, and I'm doing Kreinik. Hey, I got through the star, which I thought was going to kill me, and it didn't kill me. I'm still here. I'm still stitching with Kreinik because I put it in the Wiseman, and I'm really looking forward to the fact that the camel is coming. The camel is coming. 15 or 16 more versions of Kreinik in that thing. Anyway, it'll look lovely at the end. Anyway. So just there are a variety of Kreiniks, because I just said metallics. So Kreinik is one of the most well-known. Petite Treasure Braid, which comes in a couple of different sizes. Like there's regular Treasure Braid, which is thicker. Generally Petite Treasure Braid and Kreinik number 4 braid are interchangeable. There's the DMC Metallics, which we've talked about. But other companies also have their versions of metallics. So for example, this is the one that I pulled out. Again, still in the plastic. So Kringles. Oh, love this. Love this. Okay, so this calls for an Auvert Soie metallic, which I don't personally own, so I don't have it to show. But it's a number, well, it says Auvert Soie size 4, number 128, which I don't necessarily have that. but it's a blend again with one strand of DMC. So when I come to work on this, what am I going to choose to do with that? Goodness knows. I'll sort it out when I get there. So Herrschners has metallic threads. So this is an example of Threadworx. So Threadworx has their own metallic. Now, this came in some random box of something that I ordered. So I don't even know what it's an equivalent to, but it's a metallic that's in my stash. And so they do have, and again, so this is a variegated metallic. So this is, there's the number for you in case you're wanting it. And again, so I don't know how many colors there are, but so there are lots of companies that have metallic threads. Have I used them all? Of course not, nowhere near. Again, my personal experience has been primarily with Kreinik and Petite Treasure Braid. So, and again, there are, as you move into canvas work, there are different versions of metallics that get used in that. But I find them challenging to work with. Some are better than others. Right now, it's, so for me, for the Wiseman, the biggest problem, and even in the Star, it's the two strands of blending filament together. It's that whole twisting up on itself and the knotting and the having to go slow and anyway, but it's and Denise, I'm with you in your comment saying, you know, when you've seen it in other people's works, it looks fantastic. And I totally agree with that, because I will, yeah, absolutely. I think it makes the Wiseman's cloak just look, it truly does look fantastic in the piece. So I think it's the right thing to do. I wouldn't have substituted this for anything else, because I think that does, now, the weird thing, and I think I mentioned this last week, I think there should actually be more metallic in the cloak itself. Am I going to do anything at this point in time to try to help that along? Of course not. Nuh-uh. I think there probably should have been a little bit more in here, but there's no way I'm going to do anything more. He's going to have this really heavy border, and I'm going to call it a day. But yeah, so I think it, I mean, I think it really does look, it looks very, very opulent. Absolutely. Hence, you know, this is why I suffer for my craft and the gift that I'm working on. Yeah, take that with a grain of salt. But I think it really does add a lot to the piece, which is why I do it. And again, for me, the ends justify the means. So yeah, pain in the neck to work with, you bet. Do I really have to watch myself when I'm doing it? You bet. Do I work slower? Absolutely. Does it slow the whole process down? Yeah. But for me, it looks fantastic. For someone else, they may go, there is no way it's worth my hassle and frustration. Yeah, if you're super frustrated with your piece, it just makes it unpleasant to work with. And that's where people come up with alternatives for things, right? So all I'm going to say, Denise, try it for yourself, because there are people who go, I don't get what the big deal is. I don't have a problem with this at all. And you could be one of those people. You could be someone who turns out to be like me, who says, not my favorite thing to work with, but I can do it. Like, it just is slower and a little bit finicky and sometimes a little bit aggravating. Because I will tell you, there was one where it did get knotted and I just went, I couldn't fix it. And I was like, I just kept going, and I went, hopefully when we get to the knot part, it's going to end up on the back and it will all work out. And it did. But, you know, I know that there's a knot on the back of this thing with an extra loop back here. But again, nobody's really going to be eyeing my back. And so be it. It worked out. It worked out. And on we go. So there you go. More of Marbeck. I learned from the last time, there's no point saying what my goal is, because as soon as I say what my goal is going to be, I jinx myself. So I'm just going to keep working on this, and we're going to see where I get to next week, because the days in 2020 are starting to run out. Okay, with that, I hope everybody's had an okay week. I know for quite a few people it's been a very, very, very stressful week. But take time for yourself to enjoy the little things in life, and find some time for your stitching, and hopefully that will bring you some calm and some peace and some joy. And with that, I hope everybody has a good week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And don't forget, if there's something you want me to talk about, just put it down in the comments down below. Happy to answer any questions or talk about topics that you'd like to hear something about. Have a good week, guys.